Episode 3 begins at the beginning. We have Cooper Howard on a film set playing the all-American cowboy, with presumably the film's antagonist, Joey, pleading on the floor. However, Cooper starts having second thoughts about the script, asking why he has to kill the villain rather than arrest, stating that his previous films have had decidedly more non-fatal endings. The director, Emil, tells him that the audience want to see a good man pushed too far. Thanks to the preview scenes prior to the episode starting, showing that Cooper Howard and the Ghoul are the same man, we know that the surface world has done just that. Writer Bob got fired for being a communist. Don't be like Bob. We get introduced here to Cooper Howard's wife, as yet unnamed, but thanks to episode 1, we know they are divorced by the time the bombs fall, and he owes her seemingly a lot of alimony. Small Howard rushes onto the scene. Mrs. Howard hands over a box containing a blue outfit of some type to Cooper, and they all head off. Back to the relative present, and Wilzig is still deceased. Lucy has done quite a neat job with the chainsaw knife in the last episode, as there is no sign of a neck stump around the collar of Wilzig's shirt. However, we pan over to Ghoul Howard investigating, and presumably wondering if he can still get that bounty. He starts to cough and takes an inhaler of some sort of drug in any case. Why, we do not yet know, but it's probably not related to the bullets in his back. Now that the issue is sorted, however, both he and Dog follow the rather obvious trail towards the city ruins. Cut to Lucy walking during sunset, unless a whole evening might have passed since the last scene, which is a possibility. With Wilzig's freshly dissevered cranium climbing over giant sand dunes that were not present in the previous scene. As you know, it's a flatland from the CCCP satellite to the ruined city, and we can still see the ruined city in her scene. From what is shown, it is difficult to tell if it is the same city ruins or if she is teleported somewhere else on the map. Anyway, evening approaches, and Lucy ignores Wilzig's advice by setting up a fire. I can only guess at this stage that she either does not know or has forgotten that Ghoul Howard is after Wilzig's bounty and has a disregard for the continuation of other people. Still curious as to what's so special about him, she starts poking and prodding his head, getting electric shocks when she touches where the blue glowy thing is, which is no longer glowing unless touched. Was Wilzig having to deal with constant electrical shocks every time we saw it glowing in his neck? Well, not by the few scenes we had, so why it is now, I have no clue. In order to make sure she does not lose track of Hedzig, she stuffs a tracker up his nose. It's not like he's using it anymore anyway, I suppose. While wistfully staring off into the distance, she comments that night really was something, and I wonder who he was. I guess she means the night where she woke up to find a dog and an old man watching her sleep. Shift to Maximus, using a pulley system to right the power armor he exited. Presumably something even worse has broken in it from his crash landing, as last we saw he could still move around in it. Pulling a part out, and presumably not knowing what it is, the radio sparks into life, calling for Titus. Maximus decides to impersonate Titus, and the man on the other end is Petty Officer Shortsight. Maximus starts spinning a story about how he died with honour and glory, only after realising how dumb he sounds. Shortsight says they will send out a new squire, which makes Maximus panic and pull out the radio mid-transmission. He seemingly does not realise that having a communication cut off mid-conversation would raise alarms, but, as previously noted, the Brotherhood is full of idiots. Closing up the suit, he leaves for the inner city of Philly. Presumably power armor either has a driver's lock mechanism, or he knows that anybody poking around won't be able to use it due to it being so very broken. Going up to a girl on a repair stand that we did not see the previous day, he slaps the piece down on the table, expecting it to get fixed. She says it will cost 5 caps, which Maximus does not have, so he goes to the local dentist to get teeth pulled in exchange for enough to pay for repairs. He offers extra if she fixes it fast, so she fixes it in 1 second flat. I think this is supposed to be another joke. Back outside, and there are unsurprisingly scavengers trying to either take the power armor or get into it. Some scatter when threatened, but the others are more than a match in a fist fight, although it must be said that Maximus doesn't do too bad. The scavers finally figure out how to open the power armor and then gawk as Maximus gets up, stumbles around grabbing weapons, and then goes after them again. Once again, it does not go too well, but being a fortunate fellow, the stupid scavengers decide to lean him up against the internals of the power armor to beat him up more. This allows him to slip his left arm into the right arm socket, grab the pipsqueak's head, and pop it like a melon. The remaining scavengers flee. We then hear, and subsequently see, a vertibird flying overhead, which hovers over the centre of the Philly inner city, for some reason, and deposit a new scribe. As Maximus did not state his location, the Brotherhood either have trackers on their power armor, or figured out that since Philly was the search target of Titus, that must be where he is. The out-of-universe reason, however, is simply because both characters needed to meet, and so it's done here. Maximus, seeing that the Squire is Bully from episode 1, panics and gets back into the power armor in order to pretend to be Titus. Bully rushes over and introduces himself as Thaddeus. Maximus hovers his bloody gauntlet above Thaddeus' head for a moment, presumably considering popping a second melon today. Thaddeus grovels for his life, and Maximus smiles as he is now the one with the power. He tells Thaddeus to rise and tosses his crotch armor for cleaning, echoing how he himself was treated by the real Titus. R.I.P. Thaddeus informs Maximus that they are not the only ones searching for Wiltzig and his tech, that whoever gets it will control the wasteland, and to exterminate anyone who gets in the way. We, as the audience, already know there are multiple people after it, as Ghoul Howard said last episode, that all 6 agencies had put out bounties on Wiltzig, and the 3 that dug him up were also after it. How the Elder Clerics know that there are others out to find Wiltzig is not explained. Perhaps they heard a radio broadcast, perhaps one of the other teams found out, or perhaps they read the script too. Who knows? Cut to a car with the Sunset Sarsaparilla logo on it, and Lucy walking past in the direction of the Hollywood Boulevard. Her map shows she just has to go beyond the giant lake and she'll almost be at her destination. That should either be in the tree line or behind it. Again, it's not exactly clear. Getting near the water, we get a baby deer, which Lucy has never seen before, nor probably knows what it is, but goes to offer it some vegetation anyway. This is used as a jump scare moment as the baby deer is quickly dragged away into the undergrowth. There's a ripple in the water and Lucy takes cover behind the car, when all of a sudden a monster teleports behind her. This is the second instance in this show of teleporting wildlife. One trank shot to the mouth later and it lets go, but not before stealing Wiltzig's head and going underwater. As she gives chase around the bank, we hear her Geiger counter clicking. Why it was not doing so before, I can only assume is because the monster teleports and appeared before the radiation was detected, because it wasn't going off when she was near the water earlier. Still, her nose tracker works, and she gets ready to follow the monster into the water until... Surprise, Ghoul Howard! He has teleported behind her, the cheat, because he wasn't there when she ran up to that spot. There is no reason for him to know that's exactly where she would end up, as even if Dog was tracking the scent of Hedzig, his head went into the water by the car and not by this point, meaning the only reason Ghoul Howard is here right now is because the script said he needed to be here right now. Ghoul Howard pistol whips Lucy after a brief standoff and demands to know where the head is. Lucy says she lost it, so Ghoul Howard sticks his foot in some goo and deduces that a gulper got it. We cut now to Vault 33, from which can be seen the row of houses in the sand that Lucy either walked past or entered, depending on if there is one or two groupings of identical houses, and also no old tanker skeleton, which brings into question where exactly Lucy went walking off to in episode 2. Anyway, Chet is in the council room with Norman waiting outside. Chet says he has been reassigned from his job as door opener. This turns out to almost be his entire identity, apart from being Lucy's lover, as he says he doesn't know who he is anymore, and wanders off. Beardy Guy calls in Norman, and he gets chewed out by them, saying that opening the door could have gotten them all killed, conveniently blaming the entry of Lee Moldava and her raiders via Vault 32 on the actions of a bonehead opening the door. Betty says that Vault 31 was unscathed. Beardy Guy says that every job Norman has been assigned to has reported back that he lacks enthusiasm, which he states is accurate. Betty asks how he likes computer maintenance, to which he responds, he lacks enthusiasm, seemingly enjoying frustrating the low IQ council. He leans forward and posits the question, how do you demote someone who dislikes every job he has ever worked in? This seems to stump them, and Norman pushed further, asking if punishment is for breaking the rules is not just for dwellers, or if it extends to invaders too. This gives Betty an out. She assigns Norman the new job of prisoner meal delivery. Attempts to be civil with the raiders fail during mealtime, and we get to see them acting like savages. This tells us that the whole time that they were at the wedding reception episode 1, they were exercising almost inhuman levels of restraint, given their reaction to being fed is to throw it at the windows and to make threats. With that short interlude out of the way, we are back to Maximus being an arsehole to Thaddeus by making him climb a dead tree to look for fruit, clearly enjoying having power over his former bully. Thaddeus falls off, probably breaks some bones, and this is, again, supposed to be funny. Still, after standing back up, he suggests repairing the radio to call for reinforcements once the artifacts are found, which gets Maximus angry, as that would obviously blow his disguise and stop him having fun being an arsehole to his former bully. Questioning how the target escaped, Maximus says that the ghoul interfered, which causes Thaddeus to remark about how ghouls should be killed on sight. Maximus says not this one, as he is tracking the target too. Thaddeus, clearly showing himself as the brains of the operation, exclaims that it's a good idea, as ghouls get off radiation, which will allow them to track it. How much is not explained, but presumably it is enough to be detectable over background radiation, but also not enough to set off Geiger counters like the one Lucy has strapped to her wrist. And thus, Thaddeus leads them towards what might be LAX, but I don't know. With luck, the path leads to the Soviet satellite and Wildzig's body. They confirm the body is his by holding the drawing of the head up against the headless corpse, and Maximus rightly points out that whatever it is everyone wants, it must be in the head. With that settled, they head off following the very clear path of footprints in the sand. Back with Ghoul Howard now, who has Lucy tied up and begging for her life. He pushes her in the water. Nothing happens, so he winches her back up, and she tells him the torture is wrong. Ghoul Howard goes on about how a study found out that torture doesn't achieve anything, as Lucy's Geiger counter is spiking over 8 rads per second. Given it is soaking wet at this point, it is probable that the radiation being detected is in the water and not from Ghoul Howard or the Gulper. He dunks her back in. The conversation continues, and Ghoul Howard says he's not torturing her, he's using her as bait. However, I'm fairly sure that tying someone up and using her as bait to catch something else would be classified as torture, just not one used for extracting information, which would be pointless at this time, as both of them know that the Gorbz has the head, and thus neither has information the other one needs. From under the water, and Lucy has quite the pair of lungs to hold enough air for a whole minute and scream no less than 3 times, the Gorbz strikes. But it only gets the anchor and not her. Seeing that he has a bite, Ghoul hauls Lucy out and the Gorbz with her, which just stands there for a bit before deciding that it does actually want to eat Lucy. Ghoul is knocked away and Lucy grabs whatever is nearby to hit the Gorbz with. This just happens to be Ghoul's bag, which he put down off screen in a convenient location for her to grab in this exact situation. This works and she can get away. Dog goes in for a bite, Gorbz retreats, and then Ghoul gets back up. Gunshots to the back do not faze him, but a slap to the head does. Going to his bag, Ghoul pulls out his box of drugs, only to find them all smashed. Oh no! Obviously this annoys him, and he pulls his gun on Lucy, to which she snarkily snaps back at him. This causes him to not shoot her, and she explains the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. With his drug supply destroyed, Ghoul leaves the Gorbz dog and heads away with Lucy in tow, reasoning that their head is not going anywhere. However, forgetting that things that eat tend to have digestive systems which break down what has been eaten. Maybe he read the script, I don't know. Back to Maximus and Thaddeus as they look through a cart of junk. Thaddeus goes to refill the power armor's water bag but gets knocked back because Maximus is fearful of his disguise getting blown. Thaddeus tells his backstory as a shitter, explaining that he would be fed, go to the toilet, that waste would then be fed to flies, and the flies would be mulched and sold on. This makes no sense, as if you wanted to run a fly farm, you would need a huge amount of flies to offset the cost of food you are giving to the shitters, for the relatively small amount of waste they would produce to attract flies. It would be better just to sell part of whatever the humans were being fed in the first place. I think this entire part is here just to make Thaddeus look more pathetic. He says that's why he's so fat, which the actor is not, and raises another point. The amount of nutrition required for someone to get fat is quite large indeed, which means the fly farm had more than enough food to feed everyone and sell on without mulching flies. It is probable that Amazon actually wanted an overweight actor for this role, but none could be found. Thaddeus asks how Maximus died, which leads to a back and forth between the two, where Thaddeus says he was a good guy, but him and the other aspirants would beat him up. But it wasn't personal, of course. Instead, it was purely for his own benefit, as he used to get beaten up, but suggested beating up Maximus instead when he got recruited. From this, we learn that Thaddeus is a bully because he was bullied, and that the West Coast Brotherhood had shipments of new recruits to their aspirant training camp. We do not know if Maximus's was the last shipment that arrived, or if more arrived afterwards. So, off the pair go, in a seemingly random direction, no longer following the trail towards the ruins of the city or using the radiation detector gun, but just up over a nearby hill. I honestly have no idea how they managed to get lost so quickly, other than Maximus being an idiot. Back once again to Vault 33, and there is a meeting taking place where there is discussion on what to do with the raiders. We find out that Neckbrace's name is Reg, and he proposes it as a chance to show the surface world how they are going to make the world better. We also find out that Beardy's guy's name is Woody, and the raider he interrogated showed his arse, which Reg took as a desire to communicate, seemingly forgetting that both the Vault Dwellers and the raiders speak English, and so can communicate quite well without resorting to gestures. But then almost everyone in the vault seems to be both naive and stupid at the same time. Reg suggests that the raiders should be rehabilitated and incorporated into vault society. Stephanie looks quite upset about this, given how they killed her husband and stuck a fork in her eye. The various dwellers start chiming in about how they can help teach the raiders, while Norman scoffs at the idea and says it's not their job to help murderers. Others say they are merely a product of their upbringing in the wasteland and just don't know any better. Reg says they can't just let them go, chuckling at the very notion of it, as if there would be a danger, you see. Norman suggests they could just do to them what they did to the dwellers. Stephanie seemingly is on board with this idea, but in steps Betty to nix the idea of executing the prisoners. Norman fake apologises and calls them overseer. Given that they are the council rather than all overseers, it could just be a scripting error, or it could be them trying to show that he is smarter than he lets on, and it was a deliberate choice of wording. Given none of the council correct him, it does cement the notion that he raised in a previous episode that they don't want Hank, the true overseer, back, as they want the power for themselves. It is at this point that another dweller steps in and tells them that the water chip is broken. How? Don't know. The raiders seemingly didn't go anywhere other than the vault entrance or the atrium. But now we have a ticking clock. 2 months of clean water, not accounting for the prisoners. Cut away to the lake, presumably the next day as the sun is high again, and we have Dog still barking as Maximus and Thaddeus arrive on the scene. They are back to tracking with the radiation gun again, but oopsie, there's a mistake. Turns out they are tracking the Gulper. Maximus tries to shoot a target that is underwater, but misses every shot and runs out of ammo. Just as it is about to strike him, however, Thaddeus hits it with 1 round from an assault rifle, which has automatic fire. Still, this causes it to go after him instead. He screams while it tries to swallow him whole, and Maximus grabs hold of him and pulls. The insides all come out through the mouth and the Gulper dies. Maximus finds Lucy's boot in amongst the remains, and Dog finds Hedzig, and there was much rejoicing. Meanwhile, Ghoul, Howard and Lucy are going through a line of houses in the sand, which looks quite similar to a previously seen line of houses in the sand near Vault 33, so I have no idea where they are. Lucy is understandably quite sick, having been dunked repeatedly in overreactive water. She asks for clean water, which Ghoul Howard refuses and drinks for himself. Because ghouls need water now, you see, and even though he was left buried and dug up once a year, as mentioned in episode 1. Once again, the Geiger counter goes off as they pass a dirty puddle on the ground, and Ghoul Howard says that not much stays clean up here. Lucy's spirits are lifted as she spies a Voltec board, but Ghoul Howard shoots it in the face. Back to the past, and we find out that the outfit Cooper's wife gave him was the Volt suit. Turns out it was for a Voltec publicity suit. Cooper's wife, Barv, is part of Voltec and managed to line the whole thing up. Cooper goes through a few poses for the shoot before suggesting doing a thumbs up. This calls back to the party in episode 1, where it's mentioned that the thumbs up was what he was known for, as well as raises questions as to why in the previous scene we saw him shoot his own likeness in the head. Could it be that something nefarious went down with Voltec? Or perhaps he knows that the good man he portrayed on film did get pushed too far and became Ghoul Howard, and he doesn't like reminders of before the war. Who can say at this point? Whatever the reasons, we cut to credits. Well, what to say about this episode? The accounts of teleportation seem to be growing by the day. Maximus is still an idiot, but also a bit of a dick. Thaddeus' previous job before recruitment makes no sense at all, And Lucy is still blindly optimistic, and most of the residents of 33 are morons. Still, the pre-war scenes revolving around Cooper Howard are quite decent in my opinion. While much of the scenes in the episode are forgettable for me, I'd put it at maybe a 6 for the Cooper Howard scenes carrying it. Also, with all the scene transitions, I have no idea how many days have passed or what events are happening simultaneously. Still, please do join me in the next one for episode 4.